In this video, I'm going to show you 4 homepage configurations for Craft CMS. First option, hard-coded homepage. For this, you'd simply use your index template, which is in the root level of your templates directory. And you basically hard code. So here's my dummy site here. And since homepages, a lot of the elements rarely change, it may not make sense to make this editable in the CMS for your client. The other pattern that happens a lot on homepages is you're pulling in things from lots of different sections. So you may be pulling stuff in from other areas and it's just dynamically updated as you update those other areas. And then another option here that's common as well is to utilize globals and pull that stuff in. So the homepage, you may just use the index template is what will get rendered by default. And you may just, hard code the page or kind of grab things from here and there, and you may not need to set up a particular section for the home page. So that's option number 1. Option 2, utilizing a single section. This is probably the most common method and kind of how Craft, I would say, suggests doing this. Let's log into the control panel here, and you'll see I've got a few different sections set up here. We've got one which is the home single section type of single. And then the key thing here is you select the single. This little checkbox here with the home icon will set this Craft know that you want this to be the home page. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out. And you'll notice I've mapped this no longer to the index template. I've mapped this to a template called home-single. And obviously the underscore makes it so you can't hit templates directly in your browser. So what does this do? How does this let Craft know that it should be the home page? When you check this checkbox here in the single, you'll notice I'm in the database here looking at the settings for this single section. And you'll notice that the URI format, it just set it to this _home. Now, this is the internal mechanism Craft uses to know what the home page is. And pay attention to this because it'll come back when we look at the other section types. We look in the CMS itself, looking at the element class here, you'll see the homepage URI. They've got a constant set to this _home. So this is how the system kind of knows what the homepage should be, as it's keying off this URI. So this is one way. And now if we go here, you see now I've mapped this to that home single template. And then obviously with this single, these are made for kind of one-off pages. You can go define your fields and what have you, however you like. So that's option number 2. Option 3, using a structure section as your homepage. The great thing about structures is obviously they have a hierarchy and you can create kind of a page tree. Now this is intuitively how a lot of us have learned how to build websites and think about websites, is kind of as a graph or a tree. Main pages, sub pages, this is how we think about navigation. This is how we think about the document object model as well. So this is a pretty intuitive way, in a way that clients kind of naturally think about sites. So sometimes having a single tucked away isn't the most intuitive thing. So sometimes you may want to add, it feels a little odd sometimes to have all of your main pages in here and then have the home page tucked away as a single. So what if you want to set the home page within this structure? How do you do that? So let's look real quick at the settings of this section. So I've set this dynamic URI format to parent URI and slug. So when you create child pages, it will add the slug of the parent page. I've mapped it to this home structure entry template. So all these pages are going to use this entry template. Well, what about the home page though? We want the home page to look different than everything else. So the way you do this, again, is through this trick of, remember that constant that showed that _slug, that URI format we looked at in the database? You set that here. This is kind of weird, but this is what the system needs to set that home page. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, refresh, and now you'll see that this is mapped to my home structure _home. Now how did I do this? I did not use, you may think, well, you can probably use routes for this. I do not think you can. When you try and set the home page in routes, I think the order of the way this happens is that this is not where you would do this. This may be where you think you would. The way you do this is you map that slug to a template. So let's see how you do that. We're going to go to my home structure directory. So we got home structure. You can see I had mapped that to this underscore entry template. Now what I'm doing here is I'm dynamically loading. This is a technique when you have lots of different templates and you want to dynamically load. What I'm doing is say look in the home structure directory and then pull based on the slug. There should be a template with that name, and if there isn't, default to this template. This default template is critical. You do not want to assume that you always have something mapped here or you're going to have a bad time. So let's take a look here. The default is just a very standard template. If we go look at one of the other pages, let's look at one of the non-home pages in here, and I click on the view, you see it's using the default. Now if you look at home, we're using the structure double underscore home, and the way that's done again is with this entry slug, and that little tilde is the way you can append this slug here. Now another thing I've done here is I have a page called specialized sibling page, and you notice since we're mapping the slug, this doesn't only work for the home page. It works if you name a template after that slug, then it will load that template. So in this case I created a special one. I added this big table. I'm using Bulma here in this example, the CSS framework, and I just added their example of their crazy table here. So this is a powerful technique if you like to use structures, which I find myself using quite a bit. They're good. You can use them for navigation if you're not using a navigation plugin. They're good for, they're intuitive. They're naturally, I think, the way a lot of clients think about their sites. And so if you're not getting really complex and you want to keep things simple, smaller sites, that type of thing, having everything as a structure makes sense. And then the ability to dynamically map templates to individual pages when you need to makes sense. So you have a default that you use most of the time. For the home page is a special case. Maybe your contact page, that sort of thing, you may want to map a different template. This is an intuitive way. You just need to make sure you're paying attention to what your slugs are. So that's option 3, using a structure. Option 4, using a channel section. So this actually works the exact same way. Let's go back to our structure. I'm going to get rid of this and just change this back to home. So this works the exact same way. So if we go back here to the hard-coded index, and now we go to, I've got two entries in my home channel, and these have no hierarchy. They're not a structure. So this is just, kind of this channel is just a bunch of entries. You do this the same way. Underscore home, save it. This should now change. Now it's using my home channel, home template, and then this default entry, or this other entry here, shouldn't call it the default, is mapped just as the other one was. It's using the home channel default template. And what does the template look like? It looks just like what we saw. This is the one I have set up in the section settings. It's dynamically loading the home template and the default. Now one thing here is that your URI settings for your channel need to be at the root level for this to work. Which you see I just have slug here. I don't have a path hard-coded in here. The other thing I mentioned is you can't use routes for this, as far as I know. Now, why would you do this? Why would you use a channel to set as your home page? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think this is probably the worst option, and I don't think I've ever done this. I've done the other 3 quite a bit, but just so you know, it works basically the same way as home structure if you ever find for whatever reason you want to do this or utilize this technique. So there you have it. The 4 techniques for setting a homepage configuration in Craft CMS.